Hi everyone! Sa video na to, i-discuss natin ang part 1 ng algebra natin on properties of integers. Okay, so this is your tutor daily. So ano ba yung integers? When I say integers, it means a whole number. Okay, number without its fractional component or decimal. It may also include its negative number and also zero. For example, integers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. And also negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So yung value in negative. So integers pa rin yun. And also zero. It's considered as an integer also. So yung fraction at saka yung number in decimal format, hindi po yun integers. Only those whole numbers are called integers. So ito po yung i-discuss natin ang mga properties of integers natin. Okay? So, ang unang properties of an integer is we have the property of addition of integers. So, unang-una, meron tayong tinatawag na closure property. So, yung closure property natin, meaning to say, meron tayong example, okay, integer A, integer B. When you add these two integers, pag na-add natin, this will give us another integer. So, meaning to say, ito ay whole number, and will give us an answer which is also a whole number. So that is the first property when we add integers, which is called the closure integer or closure property. The second property is what we call the commutative property. So commutative property, when you say commutative, it's a binary operation na pwede siyang tawagin commutative kung changing the order of the operands does not change the result. Meaning to say, kahit i-change man natin, iuna natin, example, iuna natin si B, okay, plus A instead of A plus B, inuna natin si B, the answer will still be the same. For example, kung ilalagay natin, just an example, 2 plus 3, say for example, si A is 2, B is 3, that will be still equal to 3 plus 2. And both answers, these are equal to 5. So the same sila equals to 5. So it doesn't matter kung sino ang iuna natin, si A ba or si B. Okay, so si A or B is considered example represents an integer. So it doesn't matter kung sino mauuna, hindi po magbabago yung result natin or yung answer natin. And that is what we call the property of commutative. Okay, so when we add integers. The next property of adding integers is what we call the associative property. Ito naman pag sinabi natin associative property, okay, it is an expression containing two or more occurrences. Mean to say, hindi lang isa, maramihan sila, or in a row of the same associative operator. So, dapat pareho lang yung operation nila. Isang ano lang. Kung addition, addition lang. Subtraction, subtraction lang. Okay? So, the order in which the operations are performed does not matter as long as the sequence of the operands is not changed. So, ito kung titignan nyo dito, nailagay natin sa loob ng parentheses si A plus B. Nasa labas si C. So, if we're going to interchange that, lalabas natin si A, ipapasok natin si C sa loob, the answer will still be the same. Same thing also kung pwede din siya isusulat natin, si B naman ang sa labas, okay, B plus A plus C, this will give us the same answer. Okay, so that is what we call the associative property of integers in adding integers. That is our third property. Now, let's go with the fourth property. Ano ba yung property? It is what we call the identity property. So, anything, okay? So, anything that is added to zero, any integer added to zero, or any zero added to integer, ang magiging sagot natin ay always that particular integer. So, hindi nagbabago pag inat natin si 0 sa integer na yon. So, in this case, 0 is called the additive identity. So, additive identity, hindi magbabago ang value ni A kung i-add natin si 0. So, kahit anong integers to dito, whatever A represents, kahit anong number yan, anong integer yan, it will always give us an answer. That's that same integer kung i-add natin si 0. Very easy, di ba? Okay, so let's have the fifth property, which is what we call the inverse property. So, ito naman sa inverse property natin. Di ba, meron ako nagawa na video doon sa civil service exam review natin. Okay, I discussed about adding integers. So, pag nag-add tayo of integers with different sign, like positive plus negative, instead of adding, you proceed to subtraction, diba? So in this case, if you're going to add the positive add mo with a negative, same value yung integer natin, it will always give us an answer of 0. Okay, so dito. So you add A plus A, pero dito, instead of positive, negative si A. So ang process dito, pas adding of integer kasi, ang operation, you proceed to subtraction pag magkaiba yung sign nila. Then, you have to carry the sign of the bigger number. So, kung ano yung sign ng bigger number. So, in this case, sa inverse property, you are adding the same integer, okay, the same value with different sign. So, your answer will always be 0. And yung negative A is called the additive inverse. So, additive inverse ang tawag doon. So, your answer will always be 0. Pag sa inverse property naman. So last one is what you call the distributive property. So distributive property, this is basically similar with multiplication na nadidistribute. Kung titignan nyo dito, hindi lang addition ang process natin dito, may multiplication. Okay, this is a multiplication. So anong ibig sabihin ng distributive property? I-distribute natin si A dito both kay B at saka kay C na nasa loob ng parentheses. Okay? So, kaya ang naging answer, so A times B will give you AB, A times C will give you AC. And we carry the same operation, the same sign. Ano bang operation? It's adding. So, that is what we call the distributive property. So, whatever ang answer dito, same din yung magiging answer natin dito. Okay? So, that is the last property in adding integers. Now, next is di-discuss natin ito, property of multiplication of integers. Gamit na gamit itong mga property natin. You have to remember this because we will be using this in solving some of our algebra word problems. So, sa mga upcoming videos natin, di-discuss natin, magbibigay tayo ng mga example on how to solve age problems, speed problems, okay? So, gamit na gamit ito mga property of integers. Kasi, yun po ang gamit sa algebra solutions natin, equations, and expressions. So, the first property of multiplication of integers, meron tayong pareho lang din sa addition, meron din siyang closure property. So, when you multiply two integers, it will also give you an answer. Ang product natin is also an integer. So, very easy. Next is commutative. Same thing with addition, may commutative tayo. Property. So, sabi natin sa commutative, kahit ipag-change mo, okay, yung position nila, okay, yung order nila, kahit iuna mo si B, sa last si A, dito sa kabila, una si A, then si B. So, if you interchange that, it doesn't matter. Hindi magbabago yung result natin. Hindi magbabago yung answer natin. Example 2 is, A is 2. Okay, if you multiply that with 3, that will give you 6. Kung dito naman sa kabila, itry natin, iuna natin si 3 times 2. Both are the same ang result natin. They are the same. Ang answer is 6. So that is what we call the commutative property. Now, next is we have the associative property. So similarly with doon sa natin, associative property, kahit marami siyang expressions in 2 or more occurrences or in a row, okay, so the order in which the operations are performed does not matter as long as the sequence of the operands are not changed. So kung titignan mo, the same pa rin yan kahit ilabas mo dito, nasa loob si A, inilabas natin si A dito, your value will still be the same. Okay? So pag na-multiply mo to times A, okay, ito din naman, multiply mo si AB times C, this will give you the same answer. That is what we call the associative property. Now, another is the identity property. So, kung doon kanina identity property is inaat natin yung 0, identity property natin sa addition, ang 0 is considered as the additive inverse, additive identity. Dito naman sa multiplication, instead of 0, ang additive, ang ano natin, identity, ang identity property dito, si 1, ang multiplicative identity instead of 0. Okay? So, because whatever number, kahit anong integer na imumultiply mo kay 1, this will always give you the same integer. Okay? So, kahit anong number pa yan, this is 10. Kung si A is 10 times 1, that will still give you 10. A is 20 times 1, that will still be 20. A is 30 times 1, that will still give you 30. Okay, so that is what we call the identity property, wherein 1 is called the multiplicative identity. In short, whatever you multiply with, whatever integer you multiply to 1, your answer will always be that integer. Okay, yung value ng answer natin is the value of that given integer that in which na multiply natin by 1. Okay? So that is yung ano natin, multiplication of integers. Then we have number 5. So the fifth property is we have the inverse property. So sa inverse property naman, example meron tayo dito. A times 1 over A. So kung isusulat ko talaga para mas makita ninyo, this is actually A times 1 over A equals 1. So, ano nangyari dito? Cancel out lang kasi yan. So, usually pag ganyan, in mathematics, we always cancel out because they have the same value. So, what is left is only 1. So, therefore, equation natin is equals to 1. And that is what we call the inverse property. Wherein, yung 1 over A, ang tawag natin dito is the multiplicative inverse. Okay? So, yun yung kanina sa addition, ang inverse property, okay, ang additive inverse natin is the negative value of that given integer. So dito sa multiplication, ang ano niya is opposite, is 1 over that particular integer. So ito yung multiplicative inverse natin when we talk about the property of multiplication of integers sa inverse property niya. Number 6 is we have distributive property. So again, the same sample that we have given kanina, doon sa addition. So you have to multiply A sa B and multiply A to C. So this will give you AB and this will give you AC. So distributive. So yung value A, i-distribute natin, i-multiply natin sa integers na nasa loob ng parentheses, and you have to carry the sign or carry the operation. In this case, addition yung operation natin, so remain addition yung operation natin. That is what you call the distributive property. Next, the last one is we have the multiplication property of 0. So multiplication properties of 0, any integer, okay, be it negative. Okay, so even it's a negative A times 0, that will still give us an answer of 0. So any integer multiplied to 0 will always give us an answer 0. Okay, so these are the properties of integers when we multiply integers. Next is we have the property of equality of integers. So consider A, B, and C as integers or real numbers or variables of an algebraic expression. So we have the first property of equality of integers is the reflective property. So A will always be equal to A. That is reflective property. Whatever the value ng A dito, is still the same value of A. Next is we have symmetric property. Okay, so symmetric property naman, ito yung tinatawag natin na means they are similar. Okay, the same. One is the same as the other. So symmetric property. So if A is equals to B, then of course B is equals to A. So binaligtad natin. Okay? So pareho lang sila. So symmetric property, parang na-mirror lang na yung value ni A. So basically, they are the same. They have the same value. Next is we have the transitive property. So sa transitive property natin, ito naman, transitive property, if A is equals to B and B is equal to C, then therefore, A is equal to C. Okay? So kasi kung titignan nyo, pwede natin yan isulat A equals to B, then B equals to C. So therefore, pareho lang silang lahat. Okay? So that is what we call the transitive property inequality of integers. So next is we have substitution property. So substitution property naman. Okay, so if A equals to B, then A can be replaced by B in any expression involving A. Okay, so ang ibig sabihin nito, for example, meron kang expression na so then can be replaced by B. Okay, so meron kang A plus C equals X. So since A is equals to B, then we can replace B in any expressions involving A. So therefore, pwede din natin isulat B plus C is also equals to X. Okay, so because A and B, they are just the same. Okay, that is what you call the substitution property. Because the value of A is equals to B, then therefore, pwede natin i-substitute si B sa lahat ng expressions kung saan meron letter A. Okay, an integer A. So next is we have the addition and subtraction property. So ito naman, so if A is equal to B, then A plus C equals to B plus C. Okay, so kasi nga pwede natin i-interchange. Okay, so sabi natin kanina, pwede natin i-place, i-substitute. So addition property pa rin. So kung ito, kung A is equals to B, so therefore pareho lang yung value nila. Okay, so therefore, ang pwede natin substitute si A by B. And the answer or the result will still be the same. Okay. So next is we have the multiplication division property. Okay, so still with equality of integers. So dito naman, if A is equals to B, then of course AC is equals to BC. Okay, so if A is equal to B, then A divided by C is equal to B divided by C, provided na si C ay hindi equal to 0. Okay, so yung value kasi natin, so for example, A is equal to B yan. So, pwede natin i-replace si A by B sa lahat dito. So, A over C, ang naging ano natin dito is just the same as B over C. Okay? Because A is equal to B. Okay? So, dito naman, pag i-multiply natin si A times C, okay, since A is equal to B, pwede din natin ilalagay si B times C, and they will get the same value. Okay, the same result natin. That is what you call the multiplication or the division property of equality of integers. And of course, sa 7 natin, meron tayong cancellation property. So, dito, provided C is not equal to 0. So, if A plus C, okay, A plus C is equals to B plus C, then A is equals to B. Tama? Okay? So, kasi si C, the same value ang C. So, since equal sila, therefore, si B at saka si A, they are the same. Okay? Equal, the same yung value nila. Okay? So, same thing yun, multiplication natin. Okay? So, pwede natin i-cancel yan. Okay? Cancel natin si B and C. Then, that will give us A is equal to B. Okay? So, provided si C ay hindi equal to 0. Okay, so those are the property of integers in terms of equality. Now, let's go with the property of 0. So, di ba sabi natin 0 is also considered as an integer. Okay, so consider A, B, and C as integers or real numbers or variables of an algebraic expression. So, sabi natin the property of adding 0. Okay, so pwede din yung given integer plus 0 will always be that integer. Okay? So, in this case, meron tayong example. Yung first example natin dito, a plus 0. Sabi natin, any number added to 0, any integer added to 0 will always give you that particular integer. Okay? So, any number then subtracted by 0 will still give you the same particular integer or number. Okay? So that is the property of 0. So parang wala siyang value. O, i-subtract mo siya sa isang given integer, walang nangyayari, walang pagbabago. You still have the same integer, the same value. Okay? So that is the property of 0. So when you multiply also, the second is multiplication. So when you multiply a or an integer to 0, your answer is always equal to 0. Okay? So sa multiplication, when you multiply an integer to 0, your answer is 0. Now here, if you divide 0 by any integer, so for example, 0 over 1, Okay? If we divide that, 0 divided by 1, the answer will always be 0. Okay? So, provided A is not equal to 0. Kasi kung 0 yan, iba na yung sagot natin. Okay? So, this is the third property of 0. Now, the fourth property of 0, when you divide an integer by 0, okay? So, when you divide an integer by 0, your answer will always be undefined. Dito usually nagkakamali yung mga natin, mga students natin. Bakit? When they have an integer, when they divided by 0, ang nilalagay nila answer is 0. No, it should not be 0, but your answer will be undefined. Okay? So, hindi po 0 ang sagot pag dinivide natin si integer by 0. Next property of 0 is we have if AB is equal to 0, then A is equal to 0 or B is equal to 0. Kasi sabi nga natin, yung rule natin dito sa multiplication, when you multiply an integer with a 0, that will give us an answer of 0. So dito, if AB is equal to 0, meaning to say multiplication to dito. So bakit naging 0 yung sagot natin? Because one of this integer is 0. So it's either si A ang 0 or si B ang 0. So this is known as the zero factor property. Okay, so any number that you multiply with 0 will always give you an answer of 0. So mabilis lang po yung mga natin, mga properties natin of integers. So let's discuss our last property of integers. The last property is we have the properties of integers na properties of exponent. So, ito very necessary kasi minsan dito nagkakamali yung mga estudyante. Pag naging multiplication, paano ba natin i-handle yung exponents? Okay, so dito rin na may mix up. Usually they call it the power of, but it's not actually, you don't call it the power of, raised to the power. Okay, so that is exponents. So exponent po yun, hindi po yun power. But of course, in mathematics, usually yun na lang ginagamit natin, the power. But actually, it is exponent. So they actually just mean the same thing. So yung first property natin, ito yung tinatawag natin the product rule. Okay, the product rule natin. So when we add this, okay? Okay, so pag inat natin, okay, adding rule natin pala ito dito. When we add, okay, A, ang exponent, any integer m, and your another A, okay, the same yung integer, raise, okay, exponent n, ang magiging sagot natin, i-add natin yung exponent. That will be m plus n. So, yung exponent natin would be any integer also. So, example, meron tayong example, lagyan ka ng example. For example, lagyan natin the value of 2. So, lagyan natin A is equal to 2. Okay. Then, try natin M is equal to 2 also. Okay, yung exponent natin. Then, pag mag-add tayo another 2 raised to the power of n. So, say for example, si n is 3. So, magiging sagot natin dito, okay, the same siya, 2, di ba? Okay, so that will become 2. Okay. Ang exponent natin ay i-add natin 2 plus 3. Or this will give us an answer of 2 with an exponent of 5. Okay, so see, we have added the exponent. So pag addition, your exponent will also be added. Next is we have ito, second example. Second example natin is what we call the quotient rule. Yung quotient natin, A, okay, raised to exponent m divided by A with an exponent n. Instead na addition, okay, opposite siya, magiging subtraction. Ima-minus natin. Okay, so say for example, meron tayong example 2 again, raised to the power of, lagyan natin power of 3, okay, divided by 2, raised to the power of 2. So, magiging sagot natin dito, okay, is 2, then 3 minus 2. Okay? So, or that will actually give us 2 is power of 1. Kahit hindi natin isulat tong 1. Okay? So next is we have number 3 is what we call the power rule. Yung power rule naman natin, okay, so A is any integer, meron exponent m, okay, and the whole value raised also to exponent n. So, ang magiging ano natin dito ay i-multiply natin yung mga exponents natin. Okay, so again, let's make an example. 2 raised to, example, this is 2 also, m is 2, then n is 3. So, magiging sagot natin dito is 2, 2 times 2 times 3. Or that is also equals to 2 raised to exponent 6. Okay, so yan yung properties of exponent natin. Next is we have yung number 4 natin. Ito yung tinatawag natin the power of product rule. So the power of product rule, i-distribute natin si m both kay A at kay m. So ang naging sagot natin, A raised to the power of m, B raised to the power of m. So example, let's try A is 2. Lagyan natin si m is, value of m is 4, for example. Okay, so B, okay, so A is, ito muna, A is, for example, dito is 3. A is 3 times B with power of 4. Ang magiging sagot natin dyan, okay, so 3 magiging power of 4 times 2 raised to power of 4 also. Okay? So, yan magiging sagot natin. Number 5 is we have the power of fraction. So, pag meron tayong fraction, so similar siya sa ano natin, power of product rule. So, ang mangyayari lang dito, okay? So, magiging dito si raised to m, si b din raised to m kasi nasa loob sila ng parenthesis. For example, 2/3 raised to 2, power of 2 or exponent 2, that will give us, okay, 2 with exponent 2 over 3 and exponent 2 also. Okay, dinistribute lang natin. So, number 6 is we have the fraction exponent. So, sa fraction exponent naman natin, so usually, pag ito ay negative, okay, so negative yung exponent natin, pwede natin yung gawing positive by making it into fraction. For example, 2, okay, so m is negative 2. So, ang mangyayari dito, okay, this is also equal to 1 over 2 raised or exponent 2. Okay? So, any integer raised to the power of 0 or exponent 0, for example, 2 power of 0 or exponent 0, that is equal to the value of that particular integer. Okay? So, these are our properties of integers. So, I hope meron po tayong nakuha ng mga ideas or knowledge on the properties of integers para pag mag-solve tayo ng mga word problem, okay, algebra problems natin, meron tayong ideas kung paano natin itatakal yung problems, paano natin isusulat yung mga mathematical expressions natin. Okay? So, thank you so much. I hope you liked our video. Feel free to comment below, write your suggestions and comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our video. Thank you so much.